All right. Well, it is the One Leg Up with Alex Garrett feature, and I like to interview those who are have one leg up in their industry and are CEOs because they can actually inspire those who want to be in leadership position to have one leg up as well. And I feel like my next guest has a story to tell, and that's why I'm having Jameka Whitten on. And Jameka, you are a publicist, you're a consultant, but you also own JSW Media Group, which is what stood out to me. So, firstly, thanks for joining the show, and thanks to Podmatch for connecting us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for reaching out and accepting the call to interview me. I'm always humbled when people want to hear my little old story.
I want to know, firstly, why you broke out of it sounds like the establishment kind of public relations. I mean, you were in this for 20 years and you broke out into your own media group, but tell us what corporate America was like for you and then why you broke out of
I've met a lot of great people. I learned a lot. I made some incredible connections. The end game was always to live life on my own terms. I knew that I wanted to help tell really great brand stories. And I knew that I couldn't do that under the auspices of an organized structure that I wasn't in charge of. I paid my dues. I used corporate America to as my educational background, right? I used it as my training ground. I used it to, I made sure that I gave back to the companies that I worked for in the best possible way. But the whole time I knew I was just trying to gain as much traction as I could so that I could go out on my own and make an impact.
And did you feel like you were making that impact in the 20 years of experience as a in corporate America, or were you feeling a bit you weren't able to spread your wings? Let me put it that way in corporate world.
I have to say that that was part of it. Corporate structure is just that. It's a structure, right? So they don't necessarily want you to color outside the line all the time. And because I'm a strategist by nature, I like to figure out how to solve problems unconventionally. And the establishment doesn't always allow you to do that. So, I've always been different. I've always considered myself other. So I think differently. I live my life in full color at all times. So yeah, I had to break out on my own. If you want to live by your own terms, sometimes that means being on your own.
Maybe those that are in the corporate world right now still could use a little advice on how to go with it with 20 plus years of experience and grow and get that experience in corporate world, and those that want to still climb the ladder, if you will. How do they do that in such a world that it's getting financially tighter? I mean, I think you can agree it's getting a little financially tight for these corporations and for the business structure in general to
Oh,
really rise up.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. Like, the purse strings are becoming tight. Different technology that has come along. You have to really be on your P's and Q's because you can be replaced, and replaced quickly. And what I would say to make yourself as valuable as possible is to never stop learning, never stop trying to get your skills better, and expand. You have to work on your own personal brand, right? Who are you? Who are you to that company, but who are you to yourself? And how can you bring value wherever you honing those skills? It's networking is so important. Networking outside of the company as well as within. Don't be afraid, even if you're a mid-level manager or even, if you're entry level, talk to those executives, strike up conversations in the break room, talk to people, let people know what your personality is. Because what I always tell clients and what I tell other folks is people still do business with people that they like and that they hold respect for and who can hold conversations and bring value to discussions and problem solving and conversations.
With that experience you had, you were obviously a leader within that world as well. So tell us about growing to become a leader in the structure you were in and then breaking away from.
So I started off literally at the bottom. We're talking like temp contract work, and I would just go into these companies and I would talk to any and everybody. I was never afraid to have a conversation and learn. I was constantly going in and saying, well, what do you do and how can I help? That's the key to networking. I think that people forget about is it's not about what you can get from the other person. It's about what you can give. It's an even exchange of talent and activities and energy and all of those things, right? And you have to have it has to flow back and forth. It can't just be take, take, take and not give. So I think in that case, I was definitely very cognizant about making sure that I was giving as much as I was getting. And I found great mentors. And I just kind of stacked my skills and my talents, and I offered to do things that weren't necessarily in my job description to again show how valuable I could be. So I would say that's how I climbed a little bit.
Tell us about the networking, and have you been able to take some of the connections you made in the corporate world into your entrepreneurship? Have you done that?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of my clients come from the companies that I've worked for in the past, or from colleagues that now have their own companies, or they've hired me on a contract basis for some of the companies that I've worked for in the past. So it's all very circular, right time, right place, and it's about making sure that you have those strong connections with the people that you work with, and that you build relationships with your colleagues so that they call you. You're the first person that they think of.
I want to ask you about owning this media group, because I always love when people build their own network, their own world, if you will. And so, um, have you taken all this that you learned as a public relations person, as a media sort of consultant and whatnot, and made this group? Like, how did it all form together for you?
Well, it started off because I used to work in fashion and entertainment a lot, and as well as I was a journalist and I was running an independent magazine, so I had my hands on all these different connects, right, and all these different consultants and all these different folks and freelancers, and I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could tap in with all of these talented folks for specific projects and make sure that they get paid accordingly and make sure that they are have the support that they need. So it was very organic for me when I was forming JSW Media Group. And for those who aren't aware, JSW, yes, it's a media group, but what we do specifically is um, public relations and brand management. Branding is at the core of what we do. We like taking things from the very beginning, from the foundational, and then building it up and projecting that to the world and making sure that everyone's image is where it needs to be, and that it goes back to your core values of your company, and that you are projecting the right brand and expanding it, and getting the right kind of attention. So it's just a matter of using all of my connects and bringing people together and creating an environment where it was creative and also a team, and you just wanted to do really good work for people.
Well, it sounds, now when I think media group, though, are you going to start like your own, Sirius XM radio thing, or kind of a TV? What kind of outlet is it, or can people look forward to when they work with you?
I've produced podcasts in the past. I've done some work on some burgeoning TV shows, internet TV shows, and the sky's the limit. Basically, when a client comes to us and if they tell us what they need, we can definitely make it happen.
I noticed in your bio that you you love poetry. That's kind of interesting, and so it's very interesting actually. And so, how do you, as a business owner, decompress from the day to day grind, if you will, if you feel like that? It could be at times. Is poetry a way you decompress and actually express yourself as well?
I do. I do. I started off, I want to say that, oh goodness, Walt Whitman and Maya Angelou were eye-opening for me as a kid, reading their work. And, those are two starkly different types of authors, right? But it's something soothing about reading the written word, and it just made me want to create. And I love to express myself. And, just taking pen to paper sometimes is the best way for me to decompress. Um, Other decompression techniques is a really nice glass of champagne at the end of a great day. Um, Doing some spa treatments at home and just sitting and being still and listening to beautiful music and just enjoying all of the gifts and all of the joy that, I've been able to be blessed with because of, just staying true to who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing that God has told me to do.
Well, I know that you have, you mentioned your faith, and when you took this leap of faith, I mean, did you believe that God was calling you to make this own group, to get out of corporate America and say, hey, I'm going to do my own thing? Was that a sort of instinct that God told you to do, would you say?
I would definitely say it was on the path. I had been running away from things that I feel like I was told to do for so long. And finally, once I surrendered, so to speak, that's when everything fell into place. Um, and it came at a wonderful time. And the reason why I left corporate completely and I have been doing JSW for, since 2006 on a part-time basis, but I started full-time in 2014. And I'm so glad that I did because the next year, a few months later, actually, my mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and she ended up passing away from cancer in 2016. But had I not been a full time entrepreneur with the flexibility to be able to spend that last year with my mom, I would not have had that time. And I'm thankful for that. Obviously I miss her and I wish she was still here and she was taken away from me way too early. But, everything happens in divine timing. And had I not listened to that tug, that nudge to say, go ahead and step out on faith and do this, then I would have lost that time with my mom.
Well, I do believe there's a timing for everything. And so you have this media group, you have everything going for you. What's next? I mean, what are your goals with JSW Media Group?
It's just continuing to service clients really well. I mean, eventually I'd like to do even more speaking engagements and more workshops and helping the next generation of public relations professionals and branding experts kind of get up and get out and get their stuff done. That's definitely what's next. For JSW, it's just hiring even more, being able to hire even more talent, being able to expand into additional cities. Right now we have remote offices in, a lot of places in the Southeast and New York, but I want to have physical locations all over the country. So that's like the goal eventually.
I love it. Now you have a great team behind you. So tell me about being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner, and yet having a team behind you. I mean, your leadership skills obviously led you to have a staff. So tell me about your staff and how important for entrepreneurs listening to have that staff behind you is if they're not sure about dipping their toes into this. Why you need a team when you first start this?
So, a lot of people will tell you in the beginning, you have to do everything yourself. And I don't believe that. And the reason why I say that is, sometimes you just don't have the money to hire, right? But you have to invest in yourself. And investing in yourself is making sure that you have the right team to support your initiatives. I can be a bit of a control freak at times, and I have a tendency to try to put too much on my plate. My team is there for me to be able to delegate and so that I can be that visionary. I can be that business head, that business leader to go out and get the new business while everything is still moving and shaking the way that it should. My team also has, business strategists. I have people on my team who are not afraid to tell me the truth. I don't have yes people. My advice to those who are in entrepreneurship is to get a group of folks around you who are going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you the hard truth, and they're going to do it for your benefit. And they're not always going to agree with you, but it's going to be for the good of yourself and the company. It's so important to have good people and take your time and vet and but put the money aside. You have to invest in good people. And even if you can't hire somebody full time off the gate, get some contractors, pay them a portion of whatever your projects come in, do what you can.
I got to ask you this. I mean, obviously, you're a media group. So, does this mean that you get to highlight other small business owners and other entrepreneurs? Do you encourage that kind of collaboration through the media, through your media group?
Oh, absolutely. I like highlighting all sorts of folks who are doing great things and positive things in the community and beyond. So, through my connections, I can, get you in contact with other podcasters, with other people who are doing highlight reels on small businesses, or maybe we'll go live on Instagram so that you can share what you're doing with my audience and vice versa. It's all about collaboration. It's all about working together, and it's all about making it as much of an impact as you can positively.
I have to say, when we talk about small businesses, do you find that we sort of, I hate to say neglect, but don't highlight the minority owned businesses enough? I mean, is there more we could do, especially as we hit the new year, to say, hey, here are these businesses, it's minority owned? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious. If we need to do more to highlight.
Well, I think it's about making sure that everyone is part of the conversation, that you make a concerted effort to be as inclusive as possible. There are so many talented entrepreneurs out there. There's so many talented small business owners that don't get the shine that they deserve because, maybe things are not as equitable as they need to be, and they're not put in the right rooms or not put on the right, they're not given opportunities or put on the right stages. So as folks who may be part of the majority, you know, and who are not a part, I would say, if you're not part of an underrepresented group, ask yourself, what are you doing to make sure that you are being inclusive yourself and lifting up your fellow entrepreneurs of color or other marginalized groups? What are you doing yourself to make sure that all voices are heard? Because nothing is going to change unless we all work together and get it done.
Jameka, I see that you have all these different services that you guys offer to the media group. So give us a story that stands out in the almost 20 years. It's actually going to be what, 20, I'm sorry, 18 years this year of work. I mean, any stories that stand out that might be interesting for people to know?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. um, um, Goodness, I have worked. I would have to say that it's super amusing working with celebrities because it's never what you think it's going to be. When I got into this business, I was so wide-eyed and thinking that, working with celebrities and celebrity influencers was the way to go. But realizing that these folks are just like everybody else. It's just that they have more fame and more of a spotlight on them, but they are just as screwed up as the next person. Um, so I would just say that I don't have a specific story because of NDAs, I can't really share some crazy things that have happened. But just know that some of your faves out there are hot messes, but they were sweet. And that's all I'll say right now.
What's interesting is that I see you got a lot, you got these consultations and whatnot. Um, and yeah, I know it can be crazy, but when people find themselves in a bind, even you even do crisis communications, and I feel like every day there's a crisis going on in our public relations. I mean, hey, you might be on standby for Travis and Taylor if something goes wrong, right? I mean,
Listen, call me, talk to me, call me. Yes, I my crisis communication services really got heightened during 2020. Um, it wasn't even something that I was offering outside of my own client base, but I had to do it as standalone because I had companies who were just at a loss, especially when George Floyd was murdered and we had the elevation of the Black Lives Movement. People didn't know what to do, and they were saying things in corporate execs and various business owners were saying things that they probably shouldn't just because they didn't know and they didn't understand, and diversity wasn't top of mind. But when that happened, everybody was at a standstill and was so afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. And, our country was divided and, there was all sorts of things happening. So crisis communication was super important at that time. And I was getting calls left and right just to kind of come in and give a different perspective and train staff and make sure that people were getting back on the right track and just providing that alternative voice, that alternative information that they didn't have because they had such a homogenous um, communication up until then. They didn't realize that they needed to diversify it a little bit so that you can make sure that all stories were told effectively and in the right way.
I know there were a lot of corporations that just did not know how to address that, and I'm sure you swooped in and saved the day. All right, I like that you write you have creative flair. So we mentioned team. Is the creative flair coming from you directly when people work with you, Jameka, or is there a team behind you with the creative? I feel like you've got the creative part of all this, right?
I definitely have some of the creative, but I've got some great folks on the team who just ooze creativity without even trying. Especially a lot of my brand strategists and the graphic designers and even the fashion stylists that we have on staff. You come to us, we will make sure you look good, you sound good, and you feel good.
I think the other thing about entrepreneurial spirit is that we all have a vision, right? We have a vision of what we want to accomplish every day. I have a vision with this podcast, but to start your own company takes a real vision. So how do people bring that vision to life? How did you bring the vision to life at the end of the day and really have one leg up on vision as well?
You have to you have to be your conviction, and you have to understand your why. If you don't know why you're doing something, then you're not going to follow through with it. I think that's the first step, right? So if you are creating a business or you're founding a business or you're coming up with or you have this wonderful idea, you need to ask yourself why. What's my why? Is it because I want financial stability for myself and my family? Is it because I want to build a legacy? Is it because I want to do good for the community? Is it because this is just bigger than me and I need to get this out there? Just figuring out what that why is the first step. Because if your why is strong enough, you will do whatever you need to do to get it done. So you'll build that foundation. You'll stay up late at night putting the nuts and bolts together to make sure that your business plan is solid. You will figure out funding. All of these things will happen if your why is strong.
Right, the why and whatnot. And I find a lot of people try and start their business through GoFundMe or Venmo. I mean, it's a lot of patience and a lot of getting off the ground. Now, you had mentioned, and I got to tell you, we've just started talking for the first time today, but folks, if you're listening to JSW, Jameka S. Whitten here, I can tell you she's very dedicated. She had to remember she had to tell her own story too. She's so focused on getting everybody else's story out there. I said, no, we got to tell her about you today, Jameka, right? I mean, because that's your focus though. It's how focused you are on your clients that you forget you have a story as well.
I do. I forget that sometimes. And, I was reminded by my team and some close friends of mine that my story is also important and it could help someone. So, I have that. I feel like that's part of my assignment is to make sure that I am showing by example and helping people by example and, just being a resource as best I can.
Do you find you're a teacher? Because you talk about mentoring younger public relations professionals and younger entrepreneurs. Do you feel like a teacher? And did all of this experience help you become a teacher in this kind of field and entrepreneurship as well?
It did. It did. It happened naturally. I think when I got my first intern, before I knew it, this intern became like my mentee, and it was off to the races from there. But I also, a little tidbit, when I was still freelancing and very early on in my career, I was an after school teacher. I was, running an after school program in the state of North Carolina, working with second, third, fourth, fifth graders, and that was fun. And that teaches you a lot about yourself when you have to teach the next generation, right? Because kids are unfiltered and they will let you know if you are not doing a good job. So that was good. And I also used to be a Sunday school teacher, which is crazy, but considering I could be a little unorthodox, but the kids seemed to like me, and the church allowed me to keep doing it for a while. So yeah, I do. I think that teaching is something that I've always been good at, and that I do naturally, even if it's not formal.
All right. When we talk about one leg up, I also think that means taking risks, and we've kind of gone over that today, Jameka. But what's the biggest risk you found as an entrepreneur, and is there a safety net for others that may face the same risk or worry about taking risks? I mean, I think that's part of evolving your company, right?
It is. The biggest risk was probably very early on. I didn't get traditional funding. I bootstrapped my company initially, and the scariest risk I probably took was, you know, taking out loans that I had no idea how I was going to pay back, and just getting it done, and using my house as collateral, using my car as collateral, just grinding it out and figuring it out. When you put everything you have into something without knowing how you're going to get it back or what's next, that's the true faith walk. And that's when you know you are walking in your passion and you're walking in your destiny, because God will make a way if you allow Him to show you how you're supposed to get it done.
Jameka S. Whitten, the JSW Media Group. I'm seeing it here. JSWMediaGroup.com. I would love to stay in touch with you, and I see you put on some different events, and maybe 2024 you'll bring your media world to New York again. How would that? Are you looking for? Are you doing something like that this year?
Yes, that's actually, I was just talking about how I needed to spend, at least you on the ground, and you have a lot of, and I want to build that back up again. And so I want to come back and see what y'all got going on and take some meetings and see what I can get into. So that is definitely on the ticket for 2024 and beyond.
And for us podcasters, if we're more focused on telling other stories, I feel like you're a reminder that we too have our own stories. So how do podcasts? Would you say you publish some podcasts? Did that tell the story of other podcasts, or what kind of podcasts are you working on?
Right now, I am working on the Silent Vegan podcast, which is telling the stories of other vegan business owners, individuals, entrepreneurs, chefs, anybody who is promoting veganism. I used to do a podcast called Sips and Tips, which was giving business tips while having cocktails. I've done all kinds of things, actually. We used to run I used to produce an art related podcast. But to your point, to your question, podcasters, you know, when you establish a brand and your brand is very strong, you have to be able to tell your brand story, um, because that's what's going to make people want to listen, not just who you interview, but who you are as a host or a producer. So, work on that brand story a little bit, and don't be afraid to put that out there.
Well, this brand one leg up with Alex Garrett was very honored to welcome you, Jameka, and let's create a connection here and have you back on and would love to build a connection here with you because you sound great and determined and it was great that Pod Match connected us today.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad that we got that connection and I would like to keep in contact. Yeah, I got some stuff up my sleeve and it sounds like you do too. So like let's keep that conversation going.
For now, JSWMediaGroup.com. This was Jameka S. Whitten on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. Thanks again, Jameka.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you.